Hey guys, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel. Glad you guys could make it once again on Tuesday, 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Right back at you, girl. So, guys, today we're going to tackle a subject that I've been doing some research on, kind of curious about it. I got some friends that are in unions, and it's kind of interesting the dynamics of how the unions get down. In other words, how they get what they want, right? Because that's what it's all about, negotiating with uh, the companies that the workers work for to get what they want in terms of whether it's wages, whether it's better contracts, whether it's better working conditions. That's the whole purpose of unions anyway, right? Is to improve working conditions, um, possibly get higher wages for the workers, and a myriad of other things. Okay, so to dive back into the history of unions, and I don't want to dive back too far. I think the first union was founded back in the mid 1800s, right? What you say? What's that? The mid 19th century or something like that. And yeah, I mean, there was a reason for that. Before that, you had 10 to 16 hour work days. You had child labor. You had kids out there working 10 to 16 hours with the adults. You had all these things going on. So they passed the law. Congress passed the law and changed some of that. So now you have the 8 hour workday, and you have child laborers. They cut all that out, and other things. So um, unions have been very instrumental in moving society along in a positive direction, right? You don't have any more abuse from employers or anybody like that. And of course, before that, you had slavery, right, where anything anything goes during those times. And but I actually looked it up, and it said, right, that the American slave worked maybe from 10 to 16, from dawn to sundown. So they did regulate that as well, because you couldn't necessarily work them to death, even though a lot of them will work to death as well, if you do the research on that. And so, well, now you have unions, right, to kind of uh, just solve all that crap that was going on back then. Hey, Perry Life knows, how you doing? Good to see you. Yeah. So, how far have we come in terms of trade unions, right? You may have thought that we have came a pretty long way, but there are still some disparities that that uh, that still exist in the working world, in the labor market, that unions seem to not have solved. Now, I know, just like anything else, unions are a work in progress, right? They're not perfect, but I mean, come on, 2023, some stuff still going on that you just question everything. So I'm just kind of dive into that. I'm not going to talk too long tonight, but so basically, what are unions for? Okay, they provide, like I said, they can provide a wage, right? A good living wage for you. They can fight for that. They can lobby in Congress. They're good. If you need to take something to the lawmakers, unions are good for that, right? Strength in numbers, right? They improve worker safety. Like I said, child labor, they abolished that. Um, Things like parental leave, even protection for migrant workers and stuff like that. They lobby for all that stuff too. And of course, it depends on who's in the seats of power at the time, whether some bills get passed or not. Right? That's just how politics works. Um, and like holiday leave, sick leave, all that stuff. They can fight for that or advocate on behalf of workers for all of that stuff. Um, so that's pretty much what a union is for. Okay, so you do have benefits. Matter of fact, you're required in some fields to actually join the union. You're automatically in there, right? Like, I worked around a lot of longshoremen. I know a few, and they're part of the union. They got to pay dues every paycheck and all that good stuff. But when it comes time to get what they want, they will stop and put everything down, and they will halt work, and the negotiations start then. Right? It happens all the time down there. And that's the power of a union. But I want to kind of dive into you know, the story of a young lady who joined the union, and let's look at her experience. Let's look at her experience. Her name is Sharice Farris. Okay, Sharice Farris. Okay, Sharice Farris was at a dead end job, and I'm going to kind of jump through this article a little bit. To kind, I don't want to read the whole thing, but she has an interesting story. She had a dead end job for years before she found out about union carpentry. By the way, I was a welding instructor at a nonprofit, and a lot of the students, they actually got into the carpenters union, right? Well, a few of them, not everybody, right? And I want to say congratulations to those guys, because you do have to take a test and you got to do all that stuff. You don't just walk in there and become part of the union. So congratulations to those guys. So well, anyway, Farris had spent most of her 20s as a clerk, right, cashier or something like that, and but she knew that she had more in store for her if she just stepped out on faith, which she did. So, but she was working for minimum wage as a clerk, around $13 an hour. She had kids, about 4 kids, and she knew that wasn't going to cut it. $13 an hour, 4 kids, wasn't going to cut it. But the father of her kids was a union carpenter, and he told her about a program to help her get into the carpenters union, and she went for it. Okay. She knew that would be a big change from what she was doing before, which was a clerk at a at a store. And but she knew that there was something bigger for her if she just took that leap. All right, and which is what she did. Okay, so she went for it. She finished the program and she became an apprentice in 2018, and everything changed then for her. Okay, she started making about $5 more than what she was making as a clerk, around 18. So now she's making $18 an hour. Okay, so now she's she has more money at her disposal for her family and her kids, and she felt great, right? And she finished her apprentice. I think after she finished her apprentice, she was getting paid $40 an hour. That's quite a leap, right? That's quite a leap. All because she said, "I'm going to do this," and she went for it, and now she's making $40 an hour. That's congratulations to her, right? But that's a nice feel good story, guys. That's a nice feel good story, but it's not a common story. It's not it's not what happens all the time. Okay. A lot of workers, they get into the building trades, they get into the unions, and they do they do level up. Okay. It's unions, or especially in the construction field, is one of the um, very well paying opportunities there. Okay, if you don't have a college degree. Okay, matter of fact, in 2022, construction workers made an average of $32 an hour. Okay, and if you're in the union, you're definitely going to make more. I remember going to a how should I call it, a orientation. It wasn't for me. I just went there, with the students at the sheet metal workers union, and talk about opportunity. Talk about opportunity. If you climb the ladder, okay, the sliding scale on up the ladder, you can definitely top out at around $60 an hour, as a union metal worker, sheet metal worker, or something like that. Okay, so there are so many opportunities in the unions if you go for it. I tell a lot of guys, if you're going to get a skill, and you don't want to start a business, try to get in the union, because over time, if you stay in there, you can get some really good money and benefits, right? So, but the other side to that is, if you don't go and you do have a skill, go try to start a business, something like that. Okay, and then that'll get you paid too. But it all depends on who you are, and what your proclivities are. Maybe you're not the entrepreneurial type. You don't have that drive, but some people do, right? Some people don't want to go clock in, clock out every day for 40 years. Just I get it. I totally get it. But they definitely have opportunities out there if you're, if that's your thing. Okay. Yeah. So, the lady I'm just talking about, her name is Sharice Farris. She's she's not necessarily the norm. It's not common for her for what she did. Okay, first of all, she's an African American woman. Okay, and she went into a union that's dominated. Okay, by Caucasian men. All right, and so she had to deal with that. Okay, and back then the union was just about 6% African American. This was just a couple of years ago. Okay, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the U.S. cities that are building strong unions like Philly and Boston. Um, you know, hey, African Americans have been historically locked out of those organizations. So that's why I say her experience and it's not the norm for her. Maybe there was a quota to fill or something like that. I'm not taking anything away from her as far as her hard work and discipline. She took the necessary steps, probably passed the necessary tests and all that, and she got in. Great for her, But historically, okay, African American workers have been locked out of these unions. Now, unions are supposed to stand for solidarity, supposed to stand for the rights of everybody, right? So why are they being locked out? Why are they being locked out? And it reminds me as a trucker when I was going into the ports of of this country, especially on the West Coast. I would look around and see the demographics of the workers there, right? Now, as far as the mechanics and the people that fix on the chassis and fix the trucks and stuff like that, or the vehicles inside the port, hardly any African Americans in there. I'm just going to be honest. You see a lot of them as clerks, right? Clerks and stuff like that. But as far as the mechanics and people like that, jobs like that, I did not see a lot. So I suspect that this phenomena, right, it's not just in this particular union, but it's all over. Right. So it's very hard. It's not hard to miss. Right. It's very hard to not notice this stuff. All right. So, yeah, like I said, unions are supposed to stand for solidarity amongst workers. Right. But certain workers, not every worker. And I'm sure other groups can probably attest to being, not as represented as well in these unions. But I'm specifically talking about the African American demographic in this live. Because that's what the research I did, it mainly brought them up. Because, at the end of the day, let's face it, when we read about these statistics, the African American is usually the common denominator, okay? Even though there are other groups that experience some sort of discrimination and stuff like that, African Americans are usually considered common denominator and when it comes to topics of disenfranchisement, being locked out, being marginalized and stuff like that. So, yes, I am focused on that because that's what the data bears out, right? So, yeah. So why is that? So in doing my research, it says racism has always been part of the trades, okay, embedded in the founding stories, okay. When you read about how unions were formed and what went on there, right? How exclusive it was and how exclusionary as well it was when it came to keeping certain groups out. And it wasn't just necessarily a "I don't like you" thing. It was also a business move as well. All right, so let's dive into that. It said the very success of unions, and this kind of struck me. It kind of struck me, took me by surprise a little bit, but it made sense. It says the very success of unions, some historians argue, was built on the exclusion of African American workers, Black workers. Think about that for a minute, guys. The success of the unions was built on the exclusion of African American workers. It says as far back as 1791, when a group of Philadelphia carpenters organized the first recorded building trades strike in the country, the city has been a proving ground for class solidarity. So it's saying, okay, back in the late 1700s, there, Philadelphia was experiencing a uprising in people fighting for rights, workers' rights, labor rights, or whatever you want to call that. Philadelphia was the place to be. Okay, that's what it means when it says proving grounds. Right? People were getting together. People were joining in solidarity to fight. demand, okay, demand to demand, workers' rights, labor rights, improve their working conditions, get more money, all that stuff. Philadelphia is one of the main places for that. But that togetherness, okay, that solidarity, okay, was not experienced by African Americans who already at that time, remember, this is the 1700s, late 1700s, they were at the time already working under a brutal system of chattel slavery, even at that time. Okay. So, very interesting, right? They were demanding rights. Okay. Everybody else was demanding rights, but African Americans didn't have any rights at all. So we see what's the common denominator here? Obviously, it's racism, right, to its very core. Okay, and even down to the union, people joining together. Okay, now it said the exclusion has flown in the face of the movement from its very beginnings. And has claimed to fight for from its very beginnings. Okay, this movement has claimed to fight for justice and equality. So you see the hypocrisy and the contradictory themes going on here, right? You claim to fight for justice and equality. At the same time, you are suppressing the opportunity of your fellow man. How does that mesh? Well, I'll tell you how it meshes. It meshes in the sense that you can't see. The only way you can justify that is the fact that you don't see them as your fellow man at all, right? That's how that's justified. Okay. All right. But the question of who gets to be included in the definition of union solidarity has long haunted the labor movement. And for high-wage craft unions such as the trades, solidarity is much more exclusive, said Trevor Griffey. This is the guy who one of the historians quoted in the article. Okay. So in order to justify the success of the labor movement, right, in order to chart the course as to where they wanted to go, they had certain, it was guided by certain, it was undergirded or guided underneath by certain principles, unspoken principles. We can't include them, right? We can't include them. They're not part of this, okay? We use them for that kind of labor over there, but we're not going to compete with those who we think are not our equals, right? That flies in the face of who we think we are. So, but we're not going to say it out loud. We're just not going to include them, period. Okay, that first strike of white carpenters for a 10-hour workday failed, but it laid the groundwork for Philadelphia to emerge as a center of building trades power. All right, so they went for it. They didn't get what they wanted in one sense, right? They didn't get exactly what they wanted, but they did light the fire. They did light the fire underneath that area in the country, right? When it came to fighting for rights and all that stuff. Okay. It says in 1827, Philadelphia workers established the Mechanics Union of Trade Associations, the first centralized labor organization in American history. Okay. I think, and that was actually before they passed the law for ending the 8-hour workday. I don't know exactly when child labor laws were I think maybe around the same time were enacted. Okay, so they started this Mechanics Union of Trade Associations, okay, in 1827 in Philadelphia, big bastion of union rights. I mean, union, workers joining together in solidarity. But the African American artisans, craftsmen were not included in this movement for workers' rights. All right, the nation's first general strike in 1835 won them in Philadelphia workers the right to a 10-hour workday, okay, and inspired labor organizations across the country. But very few African American workers participated or benefited from the workers' victories. By 1967, the city's building trades were so It says we're so entrenched as a white power structure that President Lyndon B. Johnson piloted a federal affirmative action program in the city, dubbing it the Philadelphia Plan. So the president, okay, he said he had to pull out the affirmative action plans there, guys, okay, just to get workers in the door, African American workers, give them some rights, right? Just like now with the colleges, they try to get rid of affirmative action when they know the need for it. Hell, the president, Lyndon B. Johnson, back then knew the need for it then, because he saw. I mean, he saw the disparity, he saw the unfairness of it all. All right, it says today the city's construction unions and their 38,000 members remain a dominant force, enjoying a monopoly on major city contracts and influencing local politics as deep-pocketed campaign donors. Even their leader, and it gives a name here, their leader was convicted in a federal corruption case. Okay, so politics and unions all mixed up together. Okay, some people are bought and paid for, some people couldn't be bought and paid for, and they ended up 6 feet under. Remember that guy Jimmy Hoffa? You ever heard of him? Do the research on that guy. That's a whole nother story though. Okay, that's on the west side, I think, on the West Coast. It said the local building trades have refused to share demographic data on the workers they represent. Of course. Why would they? Why would they open up their books to see the disparities that exist? They don't want to tell on themselves. But the most recent available data from 2012 show that the industry union workforce was 99% male, 76% white, okay, in a city that's nearly 44% black, where other major labor unions are predominantly African Americans. Yeah, we see this all the time. We see this type of stuff all the time, okay? Let's see here. It says data from the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission show that among 40 Pennsylvania unions that refer workers to contractors, 91% of their more than 39,000 members were white in 2018. Okay, that's of the 40 Pennsylvania unions, and 5% were African American, black. Stark. That's some stark numbers right there. Okay, it's only 2023, and I haven't done too much research on the numbers this year, but I doubt it's changed much. It says nationally, white workers make up 75% of the 843 building trade unions that reported their demographics to the EEOC, while black workers were 16%. Okay. North America's building trades unions, which represents more than 3 million trade union workers in the United States and Canada, did not respond to requests for demographic data. Interesting. Why wouldn't they respond if everything is copacetic in the books? Hold on a second here. Very good letter says still difficult for African Americans to actually get into most of the trade unions. Yes. Nepotism is still a problem. All that's going on per your life notes. Absolutely. Yeah. So, these just are some of the stark realities when you look at the big picture. Okay. When you look at the big picture, like I said, I was an instructor at a nonprofit to teach people how to weld stuff, and some of the students got in. They wanted to get into the unions and stuff like that, and sometimes the actual union officials would come to the site and talk to the students, right, even before they finish class, and to try to recruit or at least give them the opportunity to learn about the union and all that good stuff. And I remember one particular person came and gave a lecture to the students, and he was very, very, I got to give him some respect in the sense that he didn't mince words about what you may face when you go out there into the world. All right. And by the way, this is not to, discourage anybody from going out there and making it happen, because you definitely can make it happen regardless of what's ahead of you. But just understand that, one person's path may not be your path based on who you are as a person in the United States. Okay, you may have more obstacles to based on the structures that have been established. You may have more obstacles to you may encounter more obstacles than they would, right? And that's just a hard cold fact. Okay, not said you can't be successful. Absolutely. Matter of fact, use it as fuel to be successful, right? Whatever obstacles that you encounter out there, use it as fuel. Okay, just understand, you know, I would be remiss in talking about this stuff without talking about the dark, ugly side of it all. Okay, so you got to know all sides, so you got to know what you're getting into. If you're going to fight a war, you got to know what you got to know what you're getting into, and be armed. Right, got to be armed and ready when you go out there. All right, so where were we here? Yeah. So they didn't respond. Okay. The North American Building Trades Union did not respond. And like I said, why didn't it? They don't want to open their books to show you got 5% African American or whatever other group, as opposed to 75% or 80%, of the other group. It's just ridiculous, right? So it says these statistics echo a 1902 survey, a national survey of skilled trade unions analyzed by W.E.B. Du Bois. In his book, okay, W.E.B. Du Bois was a very famous, back in, I don't remember quite the, can somebody tell me about W.E.B. Du Bois when he was at his peak? I know he was very influential. Even to this day, his name is respected in certain circles to the utmost. Okay, he was a scholar. He was all that. So he did the research, and he found that in the North, this is the North, Black union tradesmen were a rarity. Okay, you didn't find a lot of them in the North. Quote: This is a quote from his book. There are numbers of competent painters, carpenters, masons, yet who has seen one at work in a northern city? Who has seen one at work in a northern city? He's saying, they're all over the place, but you don't see, where are they? They're not at work. So in other words, they're not being hired. They're not even being considered. All right. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, that is kind of messed up on one sense, but in another sense, that's an opportunity. That was an opportunity for them to go and use their skills to build their own communities. And to me, that's beautiful. Build your own community. If they don't want you over here, you go over here and build. Right. And that's what we did. And of course, it got destroyed. Everything we built got destroyed, burnt to the ground, all that stuff. We know the history. All right. I said the centuries-long battle to integrate the building trades has had lasting and damaging effects on a city where poor people of color still struggle to find a ladder out of generational poverty. Yeah, the trades is, if you don't have college, even today, right? If you don't have a college degree or you're just coming out of prison, and the trades is that ladder out of generational poverty if you apply yourself. It's not fast money. You got to work, right? It's not fast. That's what got you in prison in the first place, right? The whole trap, the setup. But getting in the trades is that ladder out of generational poverty, and that's one of the reasons why I promote trade so heavily on this channel. That's what it's about, to get you. It's not just about fixing stuff and DIY. Yeah, it's about that too, but it's also about seeing the opportunities there. That if you apply yourself, if you get a trade, you get a skill, you can get out of that place that you're in, right? If you apply yourself, all right. It says 23% of African Americans lived in poverty in 2020, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. That same year, the median income of a Caucasian family in Philadelphia was $32,000 more than that of a African American family. For so many access to the trades has been that ladder, just like I said. But for African Americans, it's long since been broken, right? One of the rungs on that ladder is being able to take advantage of the union, being in the union, benefiting from, what unions do, which is advocate for higher wages, better working conditions, but just all translating into a better standard of living. Okay. But if you exclude certain groups, right, or let one or two in, because you got to fill that quota to make things look, make it look good, that's still a broken rung on the ladder. Everybody's not getting in. So, yeah. So back to Sharice, it says, through her years doing construction, Farris has learned some things. It says, for one, pick your battles. He says, if you're arguing with a third generation union worker and his dad is running the job, it will definitely not end well for you. And she's absolutely correct. I've heard story millions of times. You have, you have the good old boy over there. He's the head of the site. He's the head on the site, and his dad owns the construction company. You're gonna have to take it, or you're gonna have to walk off the job. The abuse you're gonna take from certain individuals. Okay. 2, not everyone on the job site, a place with workers from all different trades, okay, is going to be accepting. She said, not everyone on the job site is going to be accepting. Racist graffiti in the porta potties is common, as are comments from male colleagues like, I couldn't find a job for 2 years because I'm not black. Yeah, this is what she was experiencing. Even though she was the one that slipped through the cracks. She got, 40, she's getting paid $40 an hour now. That $40 an hour is not telling you what she had to go through to get there. Okay. The abuse she had to take, the racist abuse, right? The fact that she was a woman, she had, I'm sure she was getting all kinds of abuse on that side as well. Okay. And it says, and you're not the odd one out. You're often the odd one out. The workers will have one another. It says the workers will have known one another forever. Their grandfathers grew up together. She said, that's fine. That's fine. I'm here now. And when her kid joins the union, it'll be the other workers who say, oh, you're Sharice's kid. Okay. So she's strong, right? She's not letting all that stuff get to her, because she's thinking long term. She's thinking of generational success. She's thinking about her kids. She's probably able to hand her union card down to her kids, and I see that a lot. The longshoremen's, they're able to hand their card to their kids, and their kids can get in, right, automatically, right? And but it's sad that she had to go through all that, just to exist, just to want to have a better way of life. It's just, it's interesting. It says, but while racism courses through the history of the broader labor movement, African Americans are more likely to be union members than any other ethnic or racial group in America. All right. For years, policymakers and community leaders have struggled to understand why the building trades have not diversified at the same rate as other unions. So Philadelphia's history, which is what we're focusing on today, said it offers some clues to that. It says the building trades movement began here with the Carpenters Company, an influential guild of master builders found in 1724. Okay. I'm going to kind of skip through some of that. The Carpenters Company were all white men, most of them Quakers, who would source apprentices from their community. That meant that black men were largely excluded from these jobs, okay, laying the groundwork for generations of inequity. Okay. So that's pretty much what happened back then. So it says racial exclusion was also written into the Carpenters Company article. This is what I found very interesting. It says racial exclusion was also written into the Carpenters Company Articles of Association developed in 1763. Under the founding document, any carpenters who took on enslaved apprentices, or hired them as journeymen had to pay steep fees to the company. So if you were a white person, Caucasian person back then, and you wanted to hire, you said, oh, well, Billy, he's a hard working, he's a slave, but he's hard working. I want to hire him on, but I can't, because if I do, they're gonna charge the hell out of me. They're gonna tax me, just for doing that. So it was a way, an underhanded way of keeping African Americans out. Once again, even if you had some, a white person that was well intentioned and actually wanted to hire, or maybe not even well intentioned, but saw they could pay him cheaper or whatever, they couldn't even bring him in on that note. It says they would have to pay $3,200 in today's money per worker if they did that. Of course, I mean, nobody wants to pay that, so of course they're not going to hire Billy over there, who's probably working on a plantation for free still. Said about a decade later, the fees per enslaved apprentice nearly tripled. So you would think, hey, over time, that sentiments got a little better. People understood the economic opportunity by not having to pay Billy as much as they pay his white counterpart as an apprentice, or even if they were paid at all. I'm not sure, but that didn't even happen. The fee tripled over time. It tripled. Okay. It said in Philadelphia at the time, a center of anti-slavery sentiment, the move could be read as an abolitionist stance because it discouraged the hiring of enslaved people. But it could also be seen as a strategy to keep carpentry white. But we also have that. Let's go back in history a little bit further. When you talk about a lot of the major landmarks that were that's in the United States, the White House, the Capitol, a lot of the major universities, Georgetown University, even some of the presidents' homes like Jefferson, prominent slave owners. Okay, guess who built those landmarks? Guess who built the landmarks? The White House, built by enslaved individuals. Okay, the Capitol, built by enslaved individuals. I mean, the list goes on, right? You're talking about skilled artisans. Matter of fact, if you go a little bit further back, a lot of times when the Africans were brought here, it wasn't just anybody. They picked, some of the most skilled craftsmen from that area in Africa to bring here. So, for work, to build stuff and do all that stuff. So they were already skilled, right? They weren't taught. They knew this stuff already. They were not taught. They were they knew how to build. They were mathematicians. They were the craftsmen. Okay. They don't teach you this stuff in school. They were brought here as they were captured and brought, sold, captured and brought, and they were put to work. Right. But yet you couldn't even hire them. You couldn't even as an apprentice. Right. You couldn't even hire them as an apprentice, even though they probably knew how to build way better than you could. You couldn't even hire them on. Yeah, that's how deep it gets. All right, so where were we here? I said about a decade later, the fees tripled. I said, okay, tripled, quadrupled. You couldn't even hire them. In Philadelphia at the time, it says it was a center of anti-slavery sentiment. Okay. So for these reasons, when Philadelphia carpenters executed the first building trade strike, it's not likely black workers participated. That's an understatement. That's an understatement. Let me check the chat. Let's see where I am on the chat there. Okay. Now this goes. This is a long article. I'm not going to read the whole article. But that was diving a little bit into history, and it goes deeper than that. It goes much deeper, okay? but I'm not, like I said, I'm not gonna be on here all night. But you guys get a taste of a little bit of the history of how of what I was talking about here in terms of what Charisse experienced herself and all of that. And this is in recent years. Her story is very recent. It's a couple of years ago. Okay, so some of these attitudes still exist, and the trades aren't as unified as you think they are. Okay, they exist under the guise of solidarity, and they want, you know, if you're in one, you're definitely going to have to pay your dues, right? But in terms of diversity in the sense of a proportionate amount of individuals from different demographics in there, it's doesn't exist. Okay, it doesn't exist. So once again, that is not meant to discourage someone from joining a union. Okay, just understand that you know, there are certain hurdles that have not been that are still there. Okay, that are still there, and it's not a hurdle that can be overcome. It's not a hurdle that can be overcome by one person. It takes numbers. It takes much more than one person. It takes a different type of solidarity, and it takes the changing of minds and hearts. But it's very difficult when the changing of minds and hearts are tied to fear, and it's tied to someone's bank account, and it's tied to someone's lifestyle, self-perception. Okay, if you feel you're better than them over there, then why would you change when you're afforded certain rights that others are not? Right? Even if one individual from that group is successful, but the rest of his group was not, then you know that's really not success to me. That's a minor victory, right? So, but hey, and you guys out there want to join the union? Look into it. Okay, you got a lot of good benefits in there, and if you stick to it, you can climb that ladder out of generational poverty or wherever you're at. You gotta stay disciplined, okay, and then circulate those dollars that you get from that in your own community, so you can build them up stronger. Okay, so anyway, guys, just figured I'll talk about that tonight. Hopefully, you learned something. Appreciate you. Thanks, Burger Life Note, for joining in, and you guys have a good night. Take care. Don't forget to like and share as well. Have a good one.